So tonight, augmented reality. This is definitely a topic of heart for me, and also very interesting because it's just getting started. It reminds me of the mobile ecosystem in 1999. I'm Mario Tapia. I've been running these events for about 18 years now, so I've done probably over 300, and produced these in Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, and also New York City. On the monthly meetup side, this is kind of our topical event with a panel discussion. We do deep dives on the technical sessions. We do dinners and also hackathons. How many people were at the hackathon over the weekend? Here. Yeah, it was a great time. Awesome stuff being built this weekend. We're also our corporate sponsor, so also thanks to Mapbox for hosting us. You guys give them a round of applause. Yeah. And so, where to find us? MobileMonday.us. Meetup. How many people found us on Meetup.com? Is that how many go get my spam email newsletter every week? You don't even. Yeah. All right. How many people got their Mobile World Congress codes? How many people emailed me that it didn't work? If it didn't work, come get me. I have about 50 more codes to give out. And that starts tomorrow. We are recording this, so this will be up on YouTube in about a week, and there's lots of other cool topics that we've covered in the past years that are up there as well, and you can do keyword searches for it. Since a lot of you are standing, we're going to make this quick for the evening. Important information. Where are the restrooms? Okay, down the corner here.
Just around.
Down the corner. Good.
So that's my announcement, right? The restrooms just around here.
But go to that one. Paul Veugen with Mapbox is their AR expert, and you can tell me a bit more about how many people here first time in this office. See, so you have a lot of people that don't know you. So.
Well, that's awesome. So I start from scratch. I'm Paul. I work with the mobile team at Mapbox, which is an interesting name for everything that renders our maps and interpret building blocks for navigation. Mapbox builds tools for developers, so it's super interesting to have a large group like this in our office and to show off a little bit more of what we do. In short, what we do is we make navigation, search, and maps. And of course, there are all kinds of different map platforms out there, but we make those tools for developers. So you won't see our tools in the App Store directly, but apps like Snap, Lonely Planet, the Weather Channel, and many others are using the building blocks that we provide them to add flexible location to their mobile applications. That means that if you add a map, the map is always different. So the map for Lonely Planet will be a different map than the map for the Weather Channel, and the Snap map is one of the most amazing examples of turning the map into a contextual interface as well. On top of that, you have, of course, locations to search, figuring out the best location for your next coffee meeting, turn-by-turn navigation, which is again flexible building blocks for developers. We work with a team of 265 people, with offices in San Francisco, DC, which was the origin of the company, Peru, Bangalore, and in China. And a big part of us, or a large group of us, works on mobile. This is why we're here as well. When we saw the announcement of ARKit in June, we got quite excited because shortly before, roughly 6 months before that, we introduced the Unity SDK for Mapbox. Unity, the dominant gaming platform with about 40% of all the games on the App Store are powered by Unity, allows us to add location into a game or into a 3D experience. So the biggest driver of that market for us is the game industry, but we also see very interesting use cases around business intelligence, navigation, and other forms of creative content. And with ARKit, we suddenly got a different sort of audience for that as well. So the first example that we saw blowing up online was actually built with Mapbox tools. There was Adam, who will be joining us in the panel later as well, who visualized this bike ride using ARKit, Unity SDK, and Strava. So for us, sort of the whole figuring out what is the map without the map, and how can you use location data to build better AR experiences is a super interesting challenge. Work with our team on developer tools to help you add location into your next game, but also to bring up new experiences like what would turn-by-turn navigation look like if you would be using the Unity SDK, or how can you anchor real-world location in iOS with ARKit to do wayfinding, or how about building the next generation guides app for a lonely planet, where you'll be following someone in his footsteps, literally with an AR kit or an AR core experience. So this evening there is an interesting panel. I will keep it short and just wrapping this up. There's a huge sort of overview. I think with the people in the room we'll get a very nice overview of all the different tools, all the different building blocks, good perspective on the market, with everything ranging from investors to device makers to people driving one of the biggest platforms from Google. So I'm really, really excited for your panel, and I hope you all have fun tonight as well.
Cool, Paul, you can keep the mic. And well, welcome everybody. And I'd like to have the panelists come up, and we also have guest panelists tonight. But yeah, come on up and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Give a round of applause, thank you. All right. So what I'll have, so we have one mic for the panel. I'll just let panelists introduce yourself. We'll start with that. We'll start on your end. Cool. Introduce yourself, who you are, what you're doing. What have you been doing lately?
What have I been doing lately? Has anyone seen that tweet Paul was talking about, the AR kit, strong map thing that was floating in my apartment? Some people, the video can't see you, so everyone's seen it, just in case you're watching it on YouTube. So I've been playing around a lot with like AR kit and figuring out how to bring fitness activities into AR. If you do like a cool workout, you want to come home and kind of want to like relive it or experience it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm Preston Platt. I'm the director of Augmented Reality at ODG. So we make very small headsets for augmented reality. We've been in the field for quite a while. We started with the military. Our founder is Ralph Osterhout, and he was kind of always labeled as the Q of this generation. He always was coming up with crazy ideas and was featured in Bond movies and stuff. We're out in the industry now with the R7, but we're soon to launch the R8 and R9 as some small head-worn devices that are fully AR capable.
Hi, I'm Matt Meisnax. I'm a partner at Super Ventures. We're a small VC fund that invests pre-seed only into AR companies. Been working in AR now as an investor, entrepreneur, as an exec for about 10 years, so seen pretty much everything.
Hi, so my name is Iker, and I'm the tech lead inside the Dream WebXR efforts. So what we're trying to do in my team is expose VR and mainly AR through the web. So actually, it was pretty great to have the opportunity to launch our project along with the launch of AR Core 2 weeks ago. And previous to that, I was a professor for 11 years, working on AR, working on VR, multimedia, accessibility and such, and also as a CTO of a startup building games.
I already did my introduction.
Cool. So for the sake of, just to kind of give some order to what our discussion is going to wrap around is, one is we're going to look at what are the software platforms out there for development, and then we'll have commentary on also the different AR kits that have been produced for the platform, and also talk about hardware. And basically all of those components are very critical for this AR ecosystem. Just like how the app economy was built, it's very similar, a lot of similarities for augmented reality applications as well. And so, first of all, I'm going to focus on software, and then and also talk about how can we grow this ecosystem. So, what tools are developers using to create content, and where should developers new to AR think about starting? Because a couple of years ago, I was asking a guy magically, saying what are the guys going to be using to develop? What is the HTML5 of 1999? What are people going to be using, right? And to develop applications for this new vertical. And so yeah, I'd like to ask you guys, what are we going to be using? What do I need to start learning today so I can play in this new AR economy?
So throwing stones to my own roof, not the web, but definitely a very interesting thing to have in mind, that's for sure. But being realistic and pragmatic, the tools that are right now mainly are the native SDK in each of the platforms, so you can definitely work with ARKit directly and access all of the features that they provide on iOS through Swift and Objective-C. The same thing that you can do with AR Core, in this case in Java for Android, but that's like really low level, so really realistic tools like Unity, Unreal are the way to go for most of the people.
Yeah, what are the big ones out there? The big Steam.
Right now, as a tools
Any
for
game
developers,
platform,
they're
yeah.
usually Unity and Unreal. Those are the big ones to build things. But especially for app developers, you can embed augmented reality in your apps. If you are an iOS developer and you are using Swift directly or Objective-C, and the same for Android with Java, you can embed augmented reality in your applications today. Right? You don't need to learn something new. You need to learn some new skills, of course, about related to AR and related to 3D graphics, but there are some tools out there that help you with that, like a SceneKit in this case for iOS and some other tools for Android for sure. So those are the main ones. As a platform, that's a different thing. Steam would be more like a platform to deliver content, and AR right now is mainly focused on mobile, so Steam wouldn't be the way to go. So it would be using the regular app stores right now, like the Apple App Store and the Google Play, right?
I think from a development design perspective, there is an interesting sort of leap that we have to make, because if you look at we learned how to use brushes and paint. Suddenly we get a hunk of clay and good luck with that, right? So the hybrid forms of designing and developing in this new era, these types of new experiences, you first have to really understand what kind of technology you can use, and as a designer and a developer, you have to get very comfortable with those tools as well. So when we first started playing with ARKit initially, and now the same thing with AR Core, when our Android engineers or iOS engineers started diving into the new technologies, and we told them, hey, so start using Unity to bring in those models and to reflect this, they started shivering, right? And the same the other way around. If you ask a Unity engineer to do platform-specific work on iOS or Android, that's also not very close to their comfort zone in most cases. So you get a very weird hybrid form where you either need to use these native platforms or integrate deeply with that. Things like SceneKit and such make that easier. Or build up a team that's really has a wide range of different skill sets in order to do so.
Just as well as are great points, content is also a huge part of augmented reality, right? And I think Maya being a huge part of that, 3ds Max being a huge part of that, and Substance Designer kind of for texturing, and we're seeing interesting things with ZBrush as well. But on the content side, really, optimizing things on the 3D side to be ready for mobile is huge. And specifically for us, right, on the hardware side, us being, not a iPhone that everybody has, developing for things like AR Core and ARKit, even for the headborne side of things, is great, because if you're using a Unity or you're using an Unreal, to port those things over is pretty simplistic.
And for ODG, you guys are Android-based, right?
We are. We're Android-based, yes. Yeah, I'll add a few things to that, because I agree with everything that's been said. But I'm mostly a designer. I wouldn't classify myself as an engineer. I break the repo every once in a while, but mostly designer. I'm working with someone who is a really phenomenal Unity developer, and he came more from the games world and VR world. So I'll say, if you're really interested in AR and you're not like a hardcore developer, just go to the games community and go to the VR community. There's probably a lot of interest there and people that want to build AR apps but don't have designers, don't have front-end engineers, or whatever else. And I think it's really, really easy, just speaking as a designer, to come into building an app thinking you have all the answers. But really, you've just been working on 3D flows that have a lot of established paradigms. So when you go into the 3D world, you get kind of cocky and you think this is how it should work. And you talk to someone who's a VR developer, you talk to someone who's a games developer, and they throw all these things back at you that say, well, actually, I've tried to implement this 6 years ago, and here's the lessons that we've learned.
Adam, what have you been working on lately? I mean, what's besides ARKit, you've been using Mapbox from the mapping. What other platforms? Are you using Unity or are you using?
Yeah, kind of long story short I was actually working at Google on material design and really wanted to work on VR, and I think this was before Daydream. And kind of left Google and started really getting into VR, and I thought that was going to be the next big thing. And I ran into, I think, what a lot of people in the industry have run into, which is hardware is super, super expensive. It blows you away when you experience it. When you go into a room that's perfectly calibrated for it. But if you try to drill into your ceiling, the calibration is really hard to get right. And my girlfriend, I live in this tiny San Francisco apartment, and my girlfriend hates it when I walk around with my goofy headset and hit her while she's eating dinner. And with AR, you actually kind of see where you're going, so it's less of a problem. But yeah, you just ran into it where the cost of getting people into the experience is so high that like no matter what kind of micro optimizations you make in the experience, it's still going to be a subpar thing. So I just got less excited about it, and honestly, that's what led me to playing around with the AR kit. Just getting into an app is so much easier than putting a headset on or doing anything else.
Oh, very cool.
Let's do that one thing. I mean, the utility or the SDKs that you have right now are those, but I really think that that's my prediction. I might be wrong, but there will be an explosion of utilities just to help developers build experiences in a much easier way, right? And this is mainly because right now the technology is limited. I mean, it provides some very basic functionalities that are amazing, and it's great to have those. But the use cases that we can build with those, I really want to be wrong, but they're going to be more or less based on some of those constraints that the technology provides right now. So I really think that there is a huge opportunity to build those tools on top of it, to help developers build experiences that they don't have to be very not polished, but very specifically built, and use those tools in a very easy way.
Visually drag and drop.
For example, just placing an object in the real world, you can define some use
Geotagging
cases
it,
for those.
and then-
Yeah, and then help them with those.
Question about, so maybe for Matt, what are you looking at? Because you're behind a fund.
Yep.
It's focused on this.
Yep.
And so what are people building? What are you seeing? So you must have some good deal flow. So
Yeah,
what's that?
on from Iker's comments. Yeah, we're seeing like novelties. We're seeing the fart apps of AR. It's like I said, the capabilities of these. It's version 1, generation 1 of AR Kit and AR Core, and they only do a couple of things. They do good things. They do it amazingly well, but you can't do multiplayer. You can't have your content, go and hide behind the couch. You can't go outside. You can't drop something there and know that when you come back tomorrow, it'll still be there. So you just can't build apps that are going to be these compelling, use every day, change your life sort of apps with the features that are there today. So we are, I guess, looking at two things to invest in. One is tools and enabling technologies and anything that can sort of help make life easier for developers. And then the other thing is really looking for those apps that understand that augmented reality it's a new medium. It's not just a smartphone extension. It's different in the way that the web was different to a book. It's not just a slightly different thing. You don't get your book and just think, wow, I've got one big long page. The web enables all these new sorts of things like real-time updates and everyone crowdsourcing. AR lets you do things that you just can't do in a regular smartphone app because the content actually lives outside your phone. It lives in the world. And having to get your mind around that and think, how does my content work in a 2D world and what's native to that experience? That's a really hard problem to solve, and it's something that we're really looking for in anyone who comes to pitches.
Let me answer that. I agree with what you said. I just want to clarify one point, which is, I think when a new medium comes out, people always complain about how all the apps are trivial. It's all like fart apps. It's all stuff that's throwaway experiences. It's like, imagine if the internet came out like 1990, or imagine if Facebook came out in 1995. Everyone has such a hard time uploading their entire lives to it because they wouldn't trust it. And the reason these fart apps exist is because it's really, really hard to build AR experiences right now. Nothing's really documented. There's no UI practices. There's a tiny, tiny community. So even building that fart app is way harder than building something much more massive, like 5 years down the line, once the trail's already been placed for you.
Yeah, it's a good point. The fun apps are awesome. They need to happen. They're experiments. We love to see more of them. We just won't invest in them. I guess that's the difference.
So how do we get the ecosystem to some type of critical mass? So, talking to Paul earlier, he alluded, like, remember the Razor? How everyone had the Razor, and it brought J2ME to the world. It brought Java apps. It brought the sense of I need to download applications, and that was probably the most popular phone before the iOS, before the iPhone came out. And so what? And as we've gone, if we look at the 2000s, how ecosystem 2003, we got our first color device. We only had color in 2003, and everything was monochrome before. And then we saw growth and proliferation of smart devices. How do we get a critical mass with AR in the next couple of years? Because I think it's going to be a faster cycle in terms of for AR apps on the mobile device. Head-worn may have more of a lag because of maybe just enterprise focus or something. The markets may be different. But curious to see, how do we get to there? How do we get to this point?
I think with about 300 million devices that you can reach before roughly the end of this year, you have quite the critical mass. It's 1 out of 10 smartphones. So 1 out of 10 smartphones roughly sort of have AR-like capabilities embedded on the device itself. So any iPhone 6s, new tablet, and up is interesting from that perspective. So from developer tools and sort of adoption, it really relies on the creativity of the developer to come up with good, compelling use cases. I would almost say that the more we play with, let's say, the form factor of an iPhone to build experiences like this, the more it feels like you're prototyping. You're almost prototyping for something that's beyond what we're seeing now in terms of devices. There was also actually the first time that I had this huge ass iPad, sort of the iPad Pro in my hand. I thought this is actually pretty valuable. The screen works way better in this experience. And if you do the same experience, let's say on an iPhone 6 or even smaller, it becomes a little bit clunky and feels very out of place, like you're camping with only half of the equipment. And I think in that sense, the market is there, the tooling is building up. The biggest challenge is still sort of creating narratives around location and moving beyond the physical area that you see in front of you. So it's pretty easy to build a compelling experience inside of a room. Taking it outdoors is challenging, and that's where we try to sort of bring in location components. The developer interest is there. The App Store and Play Store have a huge interest in selling these technologies. So if there is a new device that comes out tomorrow with new sensors, you know what Apple is going to do, pushing this on the App Store. And then you have a curated App Store with the power of Apple, the muscle power of Apple, and 200 million end users. And I think that sort of in terms of critical mass, the building blocks are there, but it's up to us to do something with that.
Okay. And then how does that compete with? So we see ARKit, 200 million market probably. With AR Core, what's going to be the market size in the next year, and then how the ecosystem works. Everyone has to upgrade to the latest Android. What do the numbers look like there in the next couple of years?
Well, the numbers look promising too. I mean, definitely the challenges on Android, as usual, even if you are...
It's larger than 200 billion because of just how Android sits in the ecosystem.
It is, but the challenges are like AR has some very specific quirks that are important, and it's hard to enable all of the devices at once. So the goal right now is to have 100 million by the end of the year. So I think it's a possible.
Those will be with updates and new devices shipping.
Yeah, I mean, well, mainly using the devices that are in the market right now, but they're like high-end devices and devices that you can have a little bit more control of. So because there are. Actually, you should read Matt's some of his articles, because he explains very well what are the challenges there, right? Like the calibration of devices is important to have a very good experience and such, right? So there is more to it, like just having a camera and that's it, right? Like everything works. But talking to before, like one of the critical elements for adoption, I don't think that is going to be outreach in that regard, because everything that suddenly from one night to the next day, you have suddenly millions of devices enabled. So I don't think, of course, it will be great to have more. We always want more, But I think that the challenge is the content that is going to be driving people to use it more and more, right? To create something that is compelling, right? Everything that is the critical element here compared to like some other technologies in the past that weren't existent.
Yeah,
right now we have them.
How many people here downloaded Pokemon app last year? Wow. How many people still use it today? See, okay. How many people check in on Foursquare? All right, so, but that was a really good example, right? With just huge proliferation, right?
So I'll disagree. I don't really care how many people can use AR apps. If there's 200 million, 500 million, a billion, I don't think it really matters. Because using a old-time smartphone example, there were lots of Symbian phones out there in the wild that could run apps, but no one ran apps. They were, a flop. I think it's going to take more than just, lots of phones that can run it. We're going to need to get to the point that where people, like regular people, are using AR daily or frequently in their lives. It's going to not only take lots of devices that can run it, but that whole ecosystem of interoperability between iPhone and Android and multi-user and stuff that works in the cloud and more features into the SDK. All of that needs to reach the market before these 500, 600 million people are going to care. So just pushing it out there isn't enough in itself, but it definitely gives hope to everybody.
And I've kind of realized just through a bunch of failures that people only care about stuff that adds value to their lives. So you can come up here and talk about how awesome the tech is, but if it kind of just like doesn't add any value, people are gonna be like, that's cool, yeah, I'll download it later, and you never get any users.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good examples in the ecosystem. Yelp, how many people used Monocle in Yelp last 5 years? Nobody, see? So Yelp had AR 5 years ago in their app called Monocle, and you'd basically pull it up, like Wikitude, anybody use Wikitude? As Wikipedia with an AR environment, see? All right, so there's a lot of application that came on very early without, and they're feature sets, right, at the end of the day, just to augment.
Yeah, and kind of one anecdote I was going to add to something that I'm building, just based on that bike tweet, is you get to see like your hikes and your bike rides on this like beautiful 3D map, and it really presents this sort of depth that you just can't get on a 2D screen. And I was out at dinner with my girlfriend, and I just came back from Alaska. I did this hike where we climbed like 2,000 feet up over like 5 miles, and I felt super badass. My girlfriend wasn't there, and I was like, how do I make it seem like I'm super fit and great? So I pulled out my AR app, and you could actually see like the contours of the mountains, and see really the elevation change from like the base to the peak that we kind of climbed over. And she was super impressed, and I was really happy. And that's something that you actually know. I'm kind of like 80% joking, but actually providing value to people and having those people show off these AR experiences is going to be kind of what makes or breaks how successful the initial apps I think are going to be.
Yeah, because if you look at Yelp without maps, what would that be? It'd be like really crappy.
Or Yelp without GPS, right?
Yeah, that'd be really crappy Yellow Pages kind of stuff. But yeah.
I really haven't found yet, with VR like a little bit more, but I haven't found anybody that tried a VR headset and they weren't like blown away. And the same with AR to some extent, right? So everything that is there and that value of the wow effect is definitely there. Giving that kind of like usefulness and something that you can come back to it, that's where I see the big challenge right now. So, I mean, when we showed our demos, like measuring your space and just placing an object there, that actually just filtering that catalog that just shows the elements that fit inside your space, you say, oh, definitely I would use that if I had it. But how many times do you buy furniture in your house, right? Like it's that, those kind of like questions are very important to make, and definitely doesn't mean that there is no value to it, but it's like, there is certain value, and we have to like definitely be aware of that, not just be blind by the wow effect, right, of these technologies that I'm blown away. I mean, I've been waiting for this for so long, so you cannot imagine how happy I am inside, right? Like, but it's
So I want to shift gears a little bit to focus on hardware, because for the most part, many of us look at it from the consumer perspective, but a a lot of head-worn device hardware is enterprise focused. At least, I mean, that's where the money's at. It's a dirty little secret. Hey, there's money in enterprise, guys.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to be a Snapchat, and but actually flying cars is what we really wanted. So for Preston at ODG, talk about, you have a platform, hardware platform, head-mounted devices, head-worn device. Who's your customer? Who are you selling to? It's definitely not the consumer play right now. And just for your segment, because for all of the other players that you're sitting in the boat with on the hardware side, what are people building there? Because you're selling like, hey, FedEx, I want 1 million of these.
Yes, and so we are heavily focusing on the enterprise because that's where the money is and that's where the real need is. And people will pump a bunch of money into development for apps that they can formulate over a while and really tighten down. Now, I have to say, thank God for ARKit and AR Core to come out, because now Unity developers are using AR normally, right? And all you have to do is maybe camera swap it with our SDK, and you've got stereo content that sits in your real world just like AR content would sit with ARKit or AR Core. So now what I get to do is I get to say, hey, developers, go work with AR Core, go work with ARKit, and then when you're ready, and when we're ready, just port your system over incredibly quickly, right? There are small issues that go along with touch interface and how you have to use gaze interaction or whatever our peripherals might be, with what we launch with. But yeah, right now it is mostly enterprise focused, but we always want to be consumer focused as well. So whoever goes out and uses their glasses in the field can come back and say, oh, look at how cool this is as well to their family. And it comes down to a lot of different factors. But one of the things which you touched on is I'm really hoping we get into multi-user collaborative experiences with AR. It's kind of nice right now with your AR kit or your AR phone, right? Where you can look at something and say, hey, come look over my shoulder. But the second you have a head-worn device on, they can't see what you see. And we kind of ran into that with VR as well, where you don't get to see that same experience with someone else unless you're over a network. So I think there's going to be really interesting things that come up with that as well.
So when we started building the Unity SDK, it was initially very much sparked by the interest in Pokemon Go. So we saw the game and thought, hey, wait a minute, everything inside of that game we already have on our shelves. The only thing that we have to add is the renderer for Unity. So the team we literally scraped together a team out of different teams, and they ran on a prototype for Unity. And after announcing that and getting the first interest from the market in that, we saw that the use cases were way beyond gaming. So although Unity presents itself as the dominant gaming platform, and it's the gaming platform, and everything on their website is very focused on gaming, the interest that we see in the industry is logistics, navigation, so literally turn-by-turn navigation, self-driving cars, understanding your surroundings, visualizing that information while you're sitting in the cockpit, and business intelligence. So visualizing large amounts of data in a 3D scape. And the same examples also very much apply to the ARKit and AR Core examples that we're seeing in the market. So all kinds of different ways to interact with content and large-scale data visualizations where it suddenly makes sense to project something on the board table and to literally walk around it. When we start building the first demos, you see the impact of showing something on that device as well. So the form factor of a tablet in that sense is interesting in comparison to the glasses, where that shared object is a little bit harder out of reach still. You have to anchor it in the real world, and it's a huge challenge. It's one of the tools that we work on. But right now with a tablet, you have a nice prototyping tool. You walk around the table and everyone is looking over your shoulder, and literally the entire boardroom gets up when they start doing that. So it's super interesting to see those use cases outside of gaming and the initial interest and the more social experiences, which I think will be driving a lot of the stuff that we're going to see on the App Store and Play Store. But the business intelligence and the analytics and logistics use cases are the ones that might be powering might be paying for a bill.
A question for you, Paul, again, with Mapbox, and so a lot of the SDKs before you focused on indoors, right? Indoors, surfaces, things like that. But what about we walk outside? So now we have the football field, the playground, right?
Yeah.
Even just city streets and the sidewalks, which are ready for some type of virtual content.
So I think one of the things that we discovered and many other developers that they ran into with ARKit and AR Core is the you have a virtual you have a 0-0 coordinate system. So it's very good at detecting surfaces in your surroundings. There is no relation between this table and GPS coordinates in the real world. So the moment that you start designing experiences that are anchored in the real world, you need to figure out how to get the data inside of that inside of that viewport. The challenge with that is the positioning, because right now I'm indoors and my GPS coordinates are not accurate enough to do proper positioning. And you can get around that by building anchors and doing some sort of weird task calibration. You could almost imagine that becomes part of an onboarding of the next generation games, where you have to do some weird stuff to get your location at the right spot. So indoor positioning with real world objects is pretty challenging. But the moment that you move outdoors, you get pretty close to accurate data, at least to get funky experiences. That means that you can do through navigation, or you would be able to fly a dragon over your head in Dolores Park that follows directions, so directions APIs. The moment that you enable developers to build stuff like that, you can suddenly create experiences like spawning a puppy in every single park, or build up your next Pokemon Go gameplay based on the density data that you have. So it's not about figuring out the next ATM like Yelp did. Right now, if you look at everything that we have flowing through pipelines, the sensor data that you have in terms of available for developers, there's suddenly so much more information to work with and to design custom experiences with. Think about real-time traffic, think about through navigation, think about all the sensors that you have in your pocket. If you use those and build new experiences and can anchor that into the real world, suddenly you have a different playground.
So, question tomorrow. Apple, big announcements. And we'll have to wait for Google I/O. But what do you guys see? What's going to be announced tomorrow? Is there hardware? Is it going to be new glasses? But
it would be nice to have that information right now, but I can just guess it. So
is this new OS announced and
I think
new hardware?
I have my own personal opinion, but that doesn't mean anything, right? So I really think that there won't be any big announcement for AR, but there will be announcements that are interesting for AR. And my take is that there will be, the way I see it, to get to that point where Paul was mentioning this kind of amazing experiences where you can just anchor information and just get to it, that's actually a little bit of a holy grail to have definitely a reason to go back to AR more and more. I really think that there are two elements that you need there, right? One is called relocation, so you are able to relocate yourself in a space, could be indoors or outdoors. And the other thing that it would be nice to have is some kind of occlusion mechanism, right? So virtual objects definitely look that they're in the space, right? And I really think that the first one is actually pretty complicated to be done, and especially in a major scale and something that is compatible across devices and across technologies. So definitely, actually, Google already announced that, right? And we announced VPS, that is a system that allows you to do this kind of technology, because even though it seems that AR core is a new thing, we've been working on this for quite a long time, and actually publicly with a platform that is called Tango. And there is a lot of research and a lot of things that came out of that research. So for me, Apple is going to go for the second option, that is how to do some kind of occlusion. And because, in my opinion, it makes so much sense to have two cameras in a device, because already they already did that in the past, not just for AR, but for any user that wants to have some kind of depth perception while they take a picture with the camera. And that is so interesting for that use case, but it's also very interesting for AR in the future, because with two cameras, you can do that kind of depth perception, and you can have a much more accurate occlusion. Actually, maybe a lot of people, they don't know, but Apple, along with ARKit and the iOS 11 release, they released a way of doing depth calculation with two cameras in the iPhone 7 Plus. So they already had that in mind. For not a use case that everybody knows about, but definitely a very interesting use case for AR. That's my opinion.
Sure. We think that Apple's going to announce, ARKit, what you see now is pretty much what it's going to be. There'll be a depth camera that faces you, but unlikely to be one that faces away from you. The apps that Apple shows, to show off AR-Kit, I haven't heard any rumors of anything really.
Adam, are you up tomorrow?
Really sort of spectacular.
You just can't say.
And the only thing that I think might be, we haven't seen yet is something with using the depth camera that faces you to put like a 3D, like a Snapchat lens or a Instagram kind of mask, like those cat faces that you can have. Something like that might be the unannounced thing. But yeah, nothing mind-blowing.
Question? Yeah, he's like, yeah, who cares? It's all good for us anyway. I guess, well, if there's, sea rises, right, all boats float, right?
Yeah.
So, I think individual questions. Paul, I'm a developer. I want access to some maps. I want to try some stuff with ARKit and maybe AR Core. Where do I go?
To the Mapbox blog, of course. That's we've been putting out a lot of different resources because we've been playing with it ourselves as well. So the Mapbox blog has all kinds of different sample projects. What we try to do is include sample code so you can instantly run it. So some of the demos that we put out there, you should be able to download them in Xcode and later on for Android as well, and run it on your device. So literally, so if you want to try it out, you have iOS 11 running on a device, you can download a project and run it now. In addition to that, I think sort of in terms of to understand the landscape and how this works and why this is relevant, I would highly recommend Matt's blog post as well. Great one on TechCrunch about sort of designing for this and the new paradigms, understanding technology behind it as well.
Yeah, and Adam, for your stuff that you build, what resources did you use?
I'm going to give a very roundabout answer to your question, if that's cool. I'll just say, like, it's really, really tempting to build everything in like a behemoth WYSIWYG tool like Unity or Real Engine. Because as like a business person, you approach it saying, well, we can reach a massive market share. As a developer designer, you might already kind of be comfortable with it. But there's so many downsides you don't realize until you like ship your project. And that's not something a lot of people do when they show off demos. When you open up your app in a restaurant, for example, to show your girlfriend how fit you are, you don't want to wait 45 seconds for the phone to load and buzz up. You just want it to be instant. So you want to use a lot of native components. You want a lot of built-in magicry that Android and iOS already give you, right? A lot of accessibility support that's already built in that Unity just doesn't have. So it would be, go and prototype in Unity, go and prototype in Unreal Engine. Just be really, really careful when you're thinking about production. There's a lot of traps you can fall into. In terms of what we used, we actually built almost everything using UIKit, the entire wrappers, and then we just embedded a Unity view. And inside of Unity, we of course have the Mapbox SDK, and that's where we do a lot of the AR camera magic. But everything around it is actually UIKit. So our binary is like tiny, I think it's like 40 megabytes or something, and it has all of the iOS 11 support, and they're changing a bunch of the app art and stuff. So like all that stuff works for us immediately.
And the phone didn't choke on any of the stuff that when you were rendering it?
I mean, the actual rendering is happening in Unity, but it's such a small part of the app that loading it is just so much faster. I mean, we tried to build a version that was all based in Unity, and I think the load times were something comically like they were like 5 times longer than the way that we built it. So
cool. AR Core. Where do I go? I want to develop.
Yeah, so there's developers.google.com/AR, and you have information about the different platforms there, the web included. For the Java SDK for Android Studio, you have also the Unity libraries, the Unity plugins, and also for Unreal. So that would be the way to go. And there you have repositories for each. So
Matt, where's your blog at?
It's on Medium, just on Medium under Matt Meisnick's. Find everything.
Cool. Tell us about Super Ventures.
If you're thinking about starting an AR company, haven't got too far down the road. Usually we fund people when their product is just an idea, or maybe they've got a demo, that's about it.
How big of a check?
100K check, usually the first check in. Myself, my 3 partners, we've all had like a decade or 2 decades working in AR. There's no other investors out there that kind of have as much knowledge of the landscape and the products and everything. So we usually find we can help people in ways others can't.
Question, where do I go to connect with ODG? I have an awesome enterprise apps. But I need to get out there. How does this work?
So we do have a reticle store, but obviously it's kind of hardware dependent. You have to have the R7 or some of our products that are coming out. So there is a store that is available that you can, I'm hoping that some of these ARKit or ARCore developers can see the product and say, hey, maybe if I can be a smaller fish instead of...
It's like HoloLens, but it's a little hollow. Their apps are a little hollow. That much in there. Right there.
Yes, absolutely. So, I'm hoping that as the device comes out, we can say, hey, if you're a developer, maybe you don't want to compete with the iOS store because there's 1,000 things in there. Maybe you can jump on a product a little earlier and get in there and start making some money. And I think, as AR devices start coming out, AR, demos or AR apps can actually yield you some money, we'll start to see some people actually get into it in a large way, which is the hope.
Adam, what do you want to do next? Besides doing the Strava apps and impressing your girlfriend.
Oh, well, keep doing the latter. Yeah. Hopefully. I don't know, I feel like every time you release a project, you kind of like recalibrate kind of what's happening with it. I mean, Paul had said this a lot more succinctly than I could, which is when you release something and it's kind of open-ended and you don't really know what people are going to do with it, and you should be malleable enough to reanalyze the landscape and then seek new opportunities, right? Versus kind of like having course blinders on and just keep trudging along your path. So the app is going to develop the AR fitness map on the App Store. It's very self-descriptive.
And you're looking for funding, I hear, maybe?
No, I'm funding it by myself, which is risky but fun.
Yeah.
So I wrote myself a check. I'm a bad investor. Yeah, but it'll be on the App Store, I think, in about a week or whenever Apple decides to release iOS 11.
Very cool. I think a handful of questions from the audience. Anybody raise your hand? Question here? All right. Ask a question, please.
This is a wonderful AR session. As I was listening to you, if I was in the Renaissance period and I had to draw something out of this, the question he asked and you replied, and it has been portrayed like the Renaissance in San Francisco. So I was wondering if we have a physical reality, we got the augmented reality, we got the virtual reality, and we got the what you call spiritual reality, which is the next phase of exploration. I think I've been watching a lot of Microsoft operating systems which were in late 70s. Microsoft, we had a lot of CAD development and 3D visualization, and we also had in late 80s, and then we had the Android, we have the iOS, iPhone.
Let's get to the question.
And the question is, if I were to ask you a question, if you were to select between operating system of the future, which reflects the augmented reality, the real reality, big data sciences, Kubernetes, a lot of these operating system, microservices, big data sciences, and you were to all communicate with that operating system, what kind of operating system is coming in the future?
The question is operating system of the future.
I think that Web VR and Web AR are going to be very, very interesting things that come up very soon. It gives you kind of a universal way to interact with AR content and VR content and to post that content. So I think that in a quick way is kind of really what I'd look out for in the future.
I don't think anyone knows. We really don't. I wouldn't believe anyone who said they know. The more time I've spent, playing around in AR, just the more hard problems, you keep uncovering that the solutions to these problems are going to be pretty drastic rethinks of the way things work on phones. So we don't know the answers.
Everything that is more than operating system or not, I think that there is a new paradigm for sure. And I think that is the key. It could be built on top of one of the existing operating systems, or it could be built on top of the web. But definitely there is a paradigm shift in the sense of like whenever you are in VR, you don't want to like go download something, just go back again in VR. So you want that idea of the metaverse. And in the case of AR, it's even more important that you have very quick interactions with the virtual world that is surrounding you in the real life. So that paradigm is true that it fits very well with the web, but it could be that something new comes. But there needs to be that shift to be able to execute content without having to download a full executable binary. That's my take.
Questions? Anybody have a question over here? Okay. Fred, ask a question, please.
Yeah, sure. It'll be fairly brief. Apple has pretty consistently prioritized AR and been more quiet about VR. And maybe your comments about how true that is, what their strategy might be, how it's going to roll out.
So the way we think about that as investors, the reason we backed AR is, at its core, VR is a means of taking you someplace else. It's like almost escapism. AR is about improving what you do see, what's around you. And if you just look at how we spend our minutes in the day, like irrespective of technology, we spend much more of our time engaging with things and people that are around us than we spend escaping. So just on that basis alone, we think we're going to spend more and more time in AR than in VR, and hence AR will be a far more valuable market.
Questions? Right here.
Can we hear from Google?
I completely agree with Matt in the sense that at least Apple did some movement to support VR inside their operating system, so that at least is something that we should celebrate. But yeah, definitely I agree that VR is in a situation where it's for very specific moments and with a lot of friction. So I think that AR is a more logical step for Apple.
Hi, my name is Gia, and thanks for the great insights, for the good info. And I was wondering if you can share some of your favorite use cases that you've seen for the enterprises.
For enterprises, I think the best example is sort of the super early days. So the things that you see that are being put out are very much demos, right? We've seen some really interesting summer projects from interns visualizing logistics use cases on the table, just a different way to interact with the city. I think the example of visualizing a 3D model of an let's say Salesforce tower on a 3D landscape as well, but it's still very much about projecting something in sort of on this table. Other things that I'm really excited about is everything around self-driving cars and reimagining the experience of sitting in a car if you don't have to drive. So what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel safe and secure, what kind of information should you serve about the surroundings, and then rethinking sort of the car as an interface in that sense as well. And there are some really interesting projects happening behind the scenes that are super exciting.
Well, because of Tango, we've seen quite some enterprise-based applications, because mainly the most interesting feature is relocation, and Tango provides that. So there's been indoor location to be able to move around in a complex building or complex scenario, and also putting these kind of technologies on drones to be able to, for example, get to some places where human beings are, and they have a hard time to get, and do some measurements, especially in some kind of industries where there are valves, actual physical valves, in a space where maybe there might be like 7 feet up, and you cannot get very easily. So you can train drones very easily with these kind of VPS type of systems to be able to just map and go to those places, things like that.
One of the most, where we see it the most right now for what we're doing over on the headboard side is actually assisted reality and kind of like a beefed up telepresence. And being able to interact with what somebody's seeing based on the depth, and then saying, hey, that's the exact point you're pointing at. Because over telepresence, saying, that knob that's right there, do that knob, can get very frustrating, because then they point and say, you know, oh, there's where I'm talking. But if somebody on the other side can circle in depth and say, that's the exact spot you want to see and interact with, that usually helps out a lot more.
In terms of real-world applications, Boeing has given pretty much all their factory workers, head-mount displays to, help them do their job better after like years of trials to prove the ROI, to prove the metrics. So does DHL in Europe, Volkswagen have given pretty much all their factory workers headsets. So, although the AR Kit and Tango and all the sort of fancy sensors and stuff are coming, when it comes to like what's actually getting deployed and people paying real money for in big projects and enterprises, it's kind of simple Google Glass type stuff.
Yeah, I think ODG had an interesting BMW project design, and kind of futuristic, and then Daiquiri just announced something with Aprilia.
Yeah.
Italian manufacturing. It's kind of cool. It's like motorcycle helmets that have
Give you a heads-up display.
Exactly.
Yeah, another interesting one, right, that everybody loves to pursue, but inherently becomes a problem is viewing CAD data that people want to interact with together. And the huge problem with that is it's a ton of data, and to have that run at a low latency and track in your real world, and for us be viewable and in stereo is a very tough thing to do. And that's one of the things with doing over the cloud or network-based AR, it can become very interesting.
So. We'll talk about that in 5 years, the next AR meeting. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you. A round of applause to our panel. For hosting us tonight, and food and drinks, everyone. Who from Mapbox team? Who's here? Raise your hand. So, we'll give them a hug. You guys are welcome to hang out for about 30 more minutes before we shut down, but thanks for coming. Good night.